Hello and welcome to this free episode of TF.
It's the free one.
I've never heard that before today.
Yeah, that's right. This is the first time we're doing this.
What an interesting podcast. I wonder what it's all about and what it proposes to do. Anyway, I won't
No,
I won't ask any more questions.
Nope, we shan't. It is the full complement of all of us here today. It is Milo, Riley, Alice, and Hussein, and we are also joined by returning guest, my co-host on The Bottleman, and all-around guitar impresario, Dan Boeckner.
Dasher from Red Scare.
Yeah, that's right. It's Dan. How's it going, Dan?
I'm good. I'm just sitting here in Montreal thinking about how the Liberal government in this country just ended all benefits for COVID today. Really good stuff. Huh. Yeah. Getting better all the time.
A little bit of breakfast update for you all. I had Tim Hortons for breakfast this morning.
What?
So it's been a very Canadian day for me, start to finish.
How many Tim Hortons are there in London? There's got to be.
There's a couple in Glasgow. Is the thing. I don't know. I think they just assumed that like Glaswegians eat more unhealthily and like more fried foods than
I went to one
do.
in Milton Keynes, which is like in an industrial. It's in an industrial.
The most Canadian part of the UK.
Right, no, but it's like it was in this industrial park of like Milton Keynes, like the weirdest area to have like a Tim Hortons. And when you go inside, like somehow it's also become like a Build-A-Baz cafe as well. So like you go into this, you go into this like Canadian Tim Hortons, which for some reason is in Milton Keynes, and the only people who are there are like Bazes who are really angry that Tim Hortons doesn't do proper English tea.
At the Canadian embassy. Incidentally, do you remember those like 2003 era jokes about how America would just like build a Starbucks around you as a form of soft power? I'm bringing those back, but it's like, no, this is Canadian soft power. You do two kinds of soft power abroad. You like export spies named Michael, and you build Tim Hortons.
Yeah,
Michael Spy.
What's happening actually
Hello,
is
I'm Michael Spy.
Christia Freeland is going to build a very large Tim Hortons around the Donbass.
Well, the thing about Tim Hortons is that it's a fantastic place to exchange secret documents, things of that nature.
As a student that you would.
Yeah, if you want to pass off the diplomatic pouch to someone, you go to a Tim Hortons, you order a double and the chicken sandwich. Sit
what
down.
do you think you're rolling up the rim to reveal? Classified documents?
To be fair, if you were going to plan a crime, there is like no better place to do it than in the Tim Hortons in Milton Keynes, wedged between 3 different mechanics buildings.
Yeah. Jason Statham enjoying a double and saying like, "Listen, I told you I'm retired."
So we have a few things to talk about.
I'd never steal maple syrup again, not after what happened.
We have, that was what poisoned him and caused his heart to, etc., etc.
Right, yeah.
We're remembering the old classics on this one.
Yeah, he got diabetes.
If I don't get an insulin shot inside of 15 minutes...
Is that how you treat diabetes? You have to electrocute yourself.
My foot is going to atrophy.
So, we're going to talk about a few things. I've got some British politics, but we're interweaving it with a fun thing, and then I want to talk about Canada's fearless
I have some depressing British politics first, which is that there was a TERF convention in London today. The LGB Alliance managed to hold their annual conference. And
wait, Alice, I'm sure they advocate for stuff other than just less rights for trans. They must advocate for things for LGB people, right?
No, not at all. But you know what's really fun about this is while Rosie Duffield and Joanna Cherry were on stage, you know who else was there? Was Andy No.
Yeah, just filming everyone being like...
just going up to people, just checking out the vibe, seeing what the vibe is.
The son of famous doctor.
He was actually on his way to the M&M shop. And he just decided to drop in because he's just curious about London culture.
We're now at the point where you can be a Labour MP and share a stage with Andy No and not get you the whip withdrawn, which is cool. That's a good precedent to set, I think.
Yeah,
awesome. Right.
Canadian turf news. Margaret Atwood, one of our finest writers, outed herself yesterday as a capital T TERF.
I don't think she's a capital T TERF. I think she's a 900,000-year-old ancient woman of letters who has like bird-like bone structure and is trying to derive the entire world from first principles because she's 900,000 years old. It's like Joyce Carol Oates. Whenever I'm just like, no, you're too old to be. No, I don't take you seriously anymore.
I was surprised at the Margaret Atwood thing because hadn't she previously gotten into a ding dong with the TERFs because they were saying that The Handmaid's Tale was like being a woman.
See, that's what I mean about having to derive it all from first principles. It's like, this is not a woman who knows what a TERF is, right? This is somebody who is just like, has vibes only. And sometimes those vibes are going to lead you to like, bad places. But I feel like the argument that I want to make here is that if you live to the age of like, let's say 90, right? Then people can still get mad at you for the shit that you did before that, right? But like stuff that you do after the age of 90, you kind of have to get like a pass on. You have to
That's when you get your blackface.
Like if a baby does something, you don't get mad at a baby.
Exactly.
So, a few things I want to get through. Like I said, some British stuff, some fun stuff, a little more British stuff. We're going to help the medicine
British has
go
ever
down.
been fun.
That's true. And then we're going to talk about our fearless Deputy Prime Minister in Canada, introduce the Britain Extended Universe to a character from the Canada Extended Universe.
A little crossover.
So,
I welcome the Donbass.
Well, I'm so glad that you said that because I ran across something today. If we want to talk about, because like it's I've asked to embed as the cold open a focus group of where someone in Labour Party is talking to a bunch of people who are asked about Keir Starmer, and eventually they have to say, does anyone have anything nice to say about Keir Starmer? and it takes a few seconds before someone says, it's a good Christian name.
Yes. It's so Alan Partridge, everything that happens to that man. It's so powerful.
Bizarre too, because like the point of focus groups is that you can get them, you can push them into saying anything you want, because everybody in the world has a contradictory mishmash of ideologies that form their politics. There's always going to be one guy in a focus group who is like, well, I think it was good the way he killed that alpaca or whatever, or I think Keir Starmer is in favor of a free Cyprus, even though he isn't. It's like, but the fact that you can't get anything out of these people is like a genuine statistical anomaly at this point. He's a charisma vacuum.
So here's what's great, right? Is this is all coming as Labour has officially decided that it is not able to offer any counter-argument to the allegation, and in fact proven allegation, that Conservatives are just spending tons and tons of money on seats that vote Conservative.
Oh, right.
This is a quote from the FT. The Labour Party has officially scaled back its criticism of pork barrel public spending in Conservative seats after concluding that voters liked the idea of getting more money for their town if they voted Tory.
Oh no, we're not able to appeal to Tory voters. Such a nightmare.
This is a classic case of being destroyed by facts and logic. And
wait. So is the new approach like, we're going to give you even more bribes if you vote Labour?
Nope.
Nope, because of course not. That would be too useful.
We'll give you even more bribes if you vote Tory.
More or less. But no, I think they've just sort of decided
you'll be voting Tory, but you'll be thinking about Keir Starmer while you do it.
They've decided
how
basically
good his
that
name is.
They have decided that there really isn't much they can do about it. There's no credible promise they can make about it. So instead, individual local level Labour leaders like Andy Burnham are now just working more with Michael Gove than they are with the rest of the party.
Cool. Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
So
we're going to ask for more bribes.
Yeah. So Britain is now sort of much more officially a one-party state.
Amazing.
Right? Because they're just like, well, I mean, that's the thing, right? They're like, well, the Conservatives realized, well, we can just basically like buy the votes from people because we'll just sort of, and we talked about this like 8 months ago, right? Where we sort of saw this coming down the track. The Conservatives would just be like, well, if you voted for us, you didn't, so you're going to get the bridge to nowhere and the huge, 10-story library.
Awesome. It was hard to get to nowhere before the bridge.
And it's the and they've just said, well, we can't offer anything sort of radically different. We can't, but we also can't credibly say, well, if you get us in, then what are we going to do? We're going to do this, but more. But because they can't make any more promises than the Tories can, because they have all their fiscal credibility to stick to.
It is an
so
almost
basically just
uncut case of I welcome the X, but call upon it to go further.
Yeah.
people aren't, according to one shadow minister, people aren't exactly outraged about the idea of getting more money for their area by voting Tory. Another said, voters quite like pork barrel politics. Look, they all voted Tory. Tories gave them a bunch of things, and they all. And again, this should be sort of understand this is happening at the same time as like there is a massive strike wave happening, or a comparatively massive strike wave happening in the U.S. There are some like labor actions happening here. Back in the U.S., an Amazon warehouse now, I believe, has voted to form it's not officially unionized, but there's now a union that is formed at it, right? Like
supply chains continue to implode, COVID cases continue to go up.
Nothing but blue skies, just perfect.
Yeah, and labor is looking at this and like, well, I guess we have no angle.
Yeah. No angles.
No, like because people like it when Ben Houchin says, I'm going to put in a fourth like laser tag and leisure center in Stoke.
Awesome.
Basically.
Yeah, and 3 wasn't enough.
Yeah, and we can't say we can make no alternative offer, and we can't we can't offer them more laser tag arenas.
There's actually more quasar than the people of Newcastle under Lyme that can handle. They weren't prepared for it. Levels of laser addiction in that town have gone through the roof.
And so I think, and all of the like remaining strongholds of like any labor policy making, for example, Andy Burnham in Manchester is imperfect, like sort of relatively right wing, though he may be, are now just being like, well, that's fine. I guess there is literally the only path I have to make Manchester a better place to live is to work directly with Michael Gove.
Yeah.
There's no reason for me to work with the senior members of the party, because when he said on Twitter that we should try to get, as part of leveling up, we should try to get fares in Manchester down. Neil Coyle, a famous brunch enjoyer, let's say, has
inventor of the contraceptive coil,
said, well, actually, everyone in London pays quite a bit for their tickets, so why don't you not complain?
Great.
Awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. Fantastic.
Awesome.
Cool. Love it. Again, the only animating force in British politics is your life should be as shit as mine.
Yeah. And also just the idea of, well, I guess voters like literally everyone's preference must be the state of affairs as it is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be the state of affairs that it is.
Yeah.
We'd better try and stay perfectly still and offer nothing and do nothing.
Yeah. Everyone in Britain is in a loveless marriage with themselves.
And, the Labour Party is the party for people who want to make that marriage work, but without fixing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I can't think of Keir Starmer anymore without mentally setting his name to the song Informer by Snow.
Well, now I can't either.
Yeah, it's bad.
Great. Perfect. Thank you for poisoning all of our minds, Dan.
I welcome my wife's boyfriend. I would encourage him to go further by perhaps allowing me to sleep on the end of the bed.
Okay, that was British politics entry number 1. A little bit of fun. Have you guys ever heard of a little metal called tungsten?
Great metal, very dense.
No, but what kind of
went to school with a guy like that?
What kind of shapes does this tungsten come in?
I'm glad you asked, Alice. It comes in a cube shape.
Oh,
and
one of the classic shapes.
Crypto day traders have caused not necessarily a shortage yet, but a 300% spike in sales overnight of tungsten cubes.
You're saying there's a run on tungsten cubes?
Well, I think that lots of crypto day traders and speculators are actually they're very good at understanding the economy. So I want to hear more about the logic behind the tungsten cube and why I should invest all my life savings into it right now.
Yeah, Riley, are you saying that I should buy one of these tungsten cubes?
We should all get some cubes, like, immediately. Like, stop what you're listening to. Pause this. Go and buy some tungsten cubes.
This is not investment advice.
According to the Trashfuture podcast, this is not investment advice.
Do not buy a tungsten in any shape and sphere.
Legally, you can or cannot. We cannot tell you whether to do that.
Yeah. So, it is basically aerospace grade tungsten, which is used in lots of industrial applications. Is made by
like having a cube, for example.
Well, it's like radiation shields and things of that nature.
I'm detecting a lot of sort of like jealousy from you no cube cucks. Getting some real no cuber vibes from you guys.
Yeah. Have fun not having a cube, ass.
No cuber is a whole different constituency.
So since basically influential cryptocurrency trading and influential accounts have all been flocking to the website of Midwest Tungsten Service and buying tungsten, which they can now do with cryptocurrency, because one of them made a joke about tungsten cubes, and then they all just spent thousands of dollars on tungsten cubes.
I think I was at school with tungsten cubes.
So there's this company, right, that mills out tungsten for presumably normal purposes, right? It's run by a bunch of like Hank Hill looking guys, and they make like tungsten and tungsten accessories. And one guy emailed them and was like, "Hey, can you set up a cryptocurrency payment thing on your website?" And then it's turned on a big money hose in their office.
Correct. Yes, that's exactly what happened. A 1.5 inch cube weighs about 2 pounds. On Amazon, it's described as
dense-ass cube. To be fair,
it's very dense. On Amazon, it's described as, quote, surprisingly heavy.
Not as dense as the people who buy it.
On the Midwest Tungsten website, a 4-inch cube, which weighs 40 pounds, is being sold for $3,000. Sean Murray, Midwest Tungsten's director of e-commerce,
I'd love to run a company called Midwest Tungsten.
told CoinDesk.
You can bet that job description is newly minted. Like, that's fresh off the presses.
Before this, he was like a guy who like files the tungsten or whatever, but he was the first one to the phone, and now he's this guy.
Midwest Tungsten,
like
hello.
They got all of their payments in like cash in envelopes.
So they may make a 14-inch cube special edition weighing more than 1,700 pounds.
Yo, limited edition
cube. I need it.
So what happened is...
That's so heavy. How are you going to get that out of... how are you going to ship that?
You got to put it on a cart made of more tungsten cubes. It's the only thing that can support it.
The poor postman who has to deliver that.
Sorry you were out. We put your parcel through your window. World's strongest postman has hefted a 1,700-pound cube through the front of your house, destroying it entirely.
Your cube is sitting in front of your front door and slowly just going through the crust of the earth to the molten core.
So your car has been crushed by a cube.
So cryptocurrency fans tend to have a real thing for density, said CMS Holdings.
They sure do. They sure do, buddy.
And it is pure unsolicited obsession with density drove Dan Matuszewski from CMS Holdings to buy tungsten cubes.
This pure unsolicited obsession with density sounds like a line from a divorce proceeding.
I'm just imagining this guy being like a fucking, like having the mind of a baby, like a toddler, where there's two cubes. One of them is styrofoam and one of them is like granite.
He was trying to like rotate those cubes in his mind, but he couldn't do it without a model.
He lifts up the styrofoam cube and then the granite cube and is just clapping his hands together and kicking his legs. You can't fucking believe it.
I imagine him like the flubber guy. You know, he's like alienating people in his life in his like weird garage
I have to feel a little bit superior to these guys somehow. And my way of doing that is like, I like watches. I'm a watch person. And those are often very expensive and often entirely hype driven. And people get very excited about stupid metals. To, you know, the chance to go, oh yeah, this dial is made of like fucking ruthenium or whatever. But at least sometimes, most of the time, you can tell roughly what time it is with it, and it doesn't weigh 1,700 pounds unless you buy a Panerai.
So Dan Matuszewski from CMS Holdings then went on saying he's recently emailed Midwest Tungsten asking if they could make a yet bigger cube. I'm trying to see if we can get a 7-incher, Matuszewski told CoinDesk.
Aren't we all?
He said Midwest...
I'm trying to get rid of mine.
He said that Murray said via an email that anything larger is probably too heavy to manage. But I think that's great, right? For some reason, this whole story really, I mean, look, when we talk about the cryptocurrency space, you talk a lot about people getting cryptocurrency and then having tons of spending power, but that can only be used for horse shit.
Yes.
It can be exchanged into other money that you can use for other things, and that's a lot to do with like social construction of money and so on. But that currency requires assets, and so but because it's a completely, I mean, like I said, all currency is completely invented. It's all a social construct. It's just that it happens to be a social construct between people who have a great ability to decide the value of things.
Tungsten cubes and the men who love them.
But additionally, has zero connection to any kind of production at all. and so is impossible to use for anything that is connected to any kind of production at all. That's why it sort of goes on JPEGs of a wolf smoking weed or whatever. And so it's very funny. They were like, no, well, they fell in love with this idea of holding a cube. They actually said, one cryptocurrency investor said, I don't have a cube. I don't know really how good the feeling is, he admitted, but he's considering buying one. But I'm not going to get a cube and then have someone else have a bigger cube.
Oh my fucking God.
That's right. I got my eye on my neighbor. He's always trying to outdo me. He bought a bigger NFT of an ape nutting.
And on the pedestal, these words appear. I am Ozymandias, King of Kings. Check out my fucking cube.
I have a solution to these guys, which is I think if they're delighted, if they are delighted by a cube that is heavier than they think it is, when they pick it up, they will be equally, maybe even more delighted by a metal that is also liquid that they can hold in their hands.
Ooh, yeah.
We gotta get these guys buying mercury by the fucking oil drum.
Yeah, if I'm gonna buy a mercury bucket, I'm not gonna buy a mercury bucket that's smaller than somebody else's.
Exactly.
I get my mercury in a carbon fiber sippy cup for myself. But I think it's the perfect example, right, of this sort of strange these strange time of monsters in which we live in, at least financially and otherwise, right? Where there is just this floating valueless thing, unconnected to making or selling or doing anything. That's just sort of purely socially determined. And again, the rest of it is all purely socially determined as well, but this is socially determined by a different group of people. That is just sort of flowing out in arbitrary directions, and where everything just has this joke logic, where half of the fun of like buying a big tungsten cube is that you don't possibly have any reason for it. You're spending $3,000 on a cube that you just is like, hey, check this out, it's heavy.
Check out this cube.
Because there's nothing behind any of it.
Ozymandias isn't on a plinth, he's on a cube.
That's true.
But that's what I mean. There's nothing behind or under it. It's all just, it is these strange imaginations.
These two legs on the top.
It's these strange imaginations of an economy with nothing left to do and a society with nowhere left to go, just kind of slowly dying.
It's amazing, isn't it? When you've never actually earned any money, the things you spend your money on get like really kooky. Like when people are like, "Oh, I spent like fucking $100,000 on a fucking NFT." It's like, buy a bigger fucking house, dude. Like what?
Yeah, but also I think it's the desire to be in on something.
Yeah.
It's the desire to have a community.
Yeah, like half of the reason we're making fun of this is because like it's obviously a very stupid idea, but the other half of it is that it's not being marketed to people like us, right? It's being marketed to people who think things like, yeah, I'm not going to buy a cube and then have another guy have a bigger cube. If you marketed these with like, oh, this is the tungsten cube that the fucking like SAS use, I would buy 12.
Yeah, if somebody put 2 square wave oscillators in the cube and was like, you can connect it to MIDI and CV, I would buy the cube.
If the cube like sort of like gently pulsed and made like a sort of ambient techno noise, Riley would buy a cube.
Absolutely.
They were like, this is a tungsten BMW. I'd be like, huh? So you're saying I can't be irradiated while I drive?
So someone has stolen the tungsten out of your BMW.
Yeah, I hate that. No, I can't buy one. It's too dangerous. I actually, you know what? I don't mind the cube thing anywhere near as much as I minded the NFT thing, because I mean, at least if you buy a tungsten cube, it's probably going to hold its value. Like tungsten has value.
I guess like it's not constantly running a coal power plant all the time. It just merely takes up the energy required to make that tungsten cube, ship that enormously heavy tungsten cube to you, and then I guess you just keep it in your house.
If someone's spending like $100 on like a small tungsten cube as like a bit, like, oh, it's funny to have this small, really heavy thing, and it's like a cool paperweight or whatever, I can see that. But the point where you're spending like any significant amount of money,
I think I have no quarrel with the tungsten cubes.
I have no quarrel with your cube, sir.
I welcome the tungsten cube. Let it be known, I have no quarrel
We've
with the
already
tungsten cube.
backed down off of shapes. 6 months on this show, we've gone from, the giant murder orb is terrible, and now we're back to, I have no quarrel with the tungsten cube. This is what getting vaccinated fucking does to you.
Episode title, I have no quarrel with the tungsten
I have no problem
cube.
with the tungsten cube itself. I just think it's very interesting how cryptocurrency kind
Hold on. I'm gonna
its own
look up these
assets.
tungsten cubes here. I need to see what they look like.
Alice, I'm going to give you a hint. Cubular.
Oh wow, that's
cubular.
really not even like any sort of like filed edges or anything. It's not like there's no I don't even know what you call that, like rounding or anything. It's really just a cube.
Yeah, it looks sharp, dangerous, you know.
If someone wants to send us a tungsten cube, I wouldn't say no, to be honest.
But what would you do with the tungsten cube? Bury me with my tungsten cube.
I probably would hold it. Is what I would do.
I think it'd be like a nice accessory to take to the club, like if you're doing pickup artistry.
How heavy do you think this is?
So some guys have the feathery hat, other people have the cube. But the cube is like more of a signifier of how well you're doing a business. So
I see you've noticed my cube.
Is it about my cube? Well, it is not about my cube because I want to take us into another little bit of political discussion.
All right, but we're all still going to be thinking about the cube.
Well, yeah, I've been thinking about the cube for days. Didn't stop me from doing the rest of my job.
I'm just thinking, what's the funniest object you could whip a $100 tungsten cube at, knowing that it would shatter whatever it was instantly?
Oh, I know exactly what it is.
Cybertruck window.
No, I was going to say no, Macy's Day Parade balloon.
Bottom of the swimming pool connecting those two buildings in London.
There it is. Alice has chosen the canonically funniest answer.
You just hear donk and then just like a crack spreading.
Thank goodness. No, so we talked briefly the last bonus episode about the beginnings of the aftermath of the murder of MP David Amos. And a few things have happened since then. Number one is, I think maybe some of you will know who this is. Hussein Abedini has given an in memoriam speech for David Amos from his compound in Albania.
Nice. Ashraf 3.
Yeah.
A message from Ashraf 3.
Yeah, that's right. The MEK has fallen in behind to give a message in memoriam of their good friend and compatriot David Amos.
What the fuck?
What I actually want to talk about, right, is it's a little bit back to, I think, just the It goes back to the idea that's something we talked about on the show quite a bit. Something, Alice, that you bring up, which I thought is a good idea, which is all we can do is the impossible. Because in reaction to an MP getting murdered by a guy who, as far as I can tell, had no social media presence at all, the entire sort of media and political apparatus of the UK has, predictably, as we literally predicted, completely fallen in line with the idea that
it should be illegal to at me.
Well, a few things. Number one, the online anonymity has to end completely.
Yep.
Number two, even then, and don't forget, right, like, if you're not anonymous online, the police can and still regularly do find out who you are. Remember, one guy made a joke about Captain Tom dying and got charged with indecent communications. They found out who he was and charged him.
Oh yeah, you can get sued very easily by anyone who has the wherewithal to do it, and it is very difficult for you to defend yourself legally. Yeah, so on the one hand, it's nothing that new, but on the other hand, we
don't have online anonymity.
Yeah, but on the other hand, there's a difference between having to actually subpoena Twitter to find out the identity of CumDad69 versus having a big button on CumDad69's profile that says press this button to call this guy's line manager.
Yeah, and the thing is, right, is that we talked about that a bit, but some of the key details as to how this is going to shake out are sort of getting released, which is that they want to build it into the online harms bill.
Mm-hmm.
And the online harms bill is something that I think is worth talking about, right? Especially because, safety, rather.
Online harms bill would also be a pretty good anonymous Twitter name, to be honest.
Online safety bill, excuse me.
They call me online harms bill.
And this basically says, right, Remember that there was supposed to be that porn ban?
Yeah, that they tried several times and always kicked down the road and tried to make ISPs do it because it was really difficult, and that's why you have to like do a really tepid button whenever you set up a new Wi-Fi network that's like, oh, I would like to see some pornography, please. Mightn't I jerk off?
But the thing is, right, is that it was completely impossible for them to implement it because they sort of forgot that the internet doesn't like to change its business model based on where it is.
Yes.
And so they're trying to sort of do something similar now, where there's a lot of hand-wringing about, Ofcom is going to be appointed as a regulator of social media sites and force companies to have a, quote, duty of care for their users.
Impossible. Facebook is going to eat it.
And that's the thing. I want to sort of say right up front, this is not going to happen.
No.
As much as people like to, I don't like to make predictions, but as much as people are liking to make a sort of great hue and cry about this law, it is completely impossible to do. Right? They say they want to force social media sites to have a duty of care for their users, including protecting adults from, check this out, legal but harmful content. And what that is will be determined by a political appointee at Ofcom.
Yes, it's illegal to hurt my feelings.
Bearing in mind that for a long time, and I think this might still be ongoing, by trying to get Paul Dacre to be head of Ofcom.
They're trying, but he was disqualified, but they're just more trying to get him to reapply until he gets in.
So in any case, we'll either have like Paul Dacre deciding what you can and can't post online, or you will have someone within that vein who will decide what you can and can't post online.
And the thing is, look, I don't particularly consider the ability to be like passingly rude to a Twitter account that says Preeti Patel on it, that's run by one of her staff, to be a particularly important form of politics.
You say that, but
yeah.
Look at how much it upsets them. That's the only point in its favor is like, remember that period when a bunch of like relatively senior Trump staffers resigned because they got yelled at in a restaurant once?
Yes. That's very funny.
Similar thing of like the only real consequence that these people seem to be scared of is like you posting the photo of the pig shitting on its own balls.
Well, the thing is, right, is that because the head of Ofcom is a political appointee, because they have wide jurisdiction to determine what is legal but harmful, and then all of a sudden you could say, for example, an article about harm reduction for drug users. You say, that's encouraging people to take drugs, and the political reality of the UK is that the harm that is done to you by taking drugs far outstrips the potential benefits of taking drugs safely. So therefore, it is legal but harmful content, and Twitter will have to preemptively take or Facebook legal, or whatever will have to preemptively take it down. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, it's legal but harmful content to say if you're on an NHS waiting list for hormones that takes 10 years, this is how you can get them yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, if any of this had any chance of being enforced at all, then it would be quite concerning.
Bits of it will still slip through. Like the Communications Act 2003 did this too. Like it mostly unenforceable, but enforceable enough to like destroy a couple of people entirely. So that's going to be fun.
So the targets of the laws are actually the social media companies rather than the users. And so the idea being that social media companies have a duty to remove posts that are legal but harmful, and they have to guess what's going to be legal but harmful. And the thing is, and then they face like steep fines if they don't. And the thing is, we've talked about before, right? Like Amazon, a company like Amazon is actually quite vulnerable to individual like legislation, for example, like labor legislation in certain countries, because it needs to be everywhere. Its business model is that it has to be everywhere. It can't not be somewhere. But the problem is it has, and all that's true for a lot of these tech companies. They need to be everywhere, but it needs to be the same product. Mm-hmm. And having a whole other British version of Facebook where like there are some
Don't
guys.
Even make me think about that. Fuck you.
Yeah. British Facebook is one of the most cursed fucking.
One emoji and it's the crying laughing.
Yes. Yeah. But it doesn't work like that because they would have to suddenly create a different product for a relatively small market. And it's strange that like so much of the sort of discussion of this bill has totally forgotten about the fact that Britain's not that important.
Yeah.
And so the people who are against it say, it will threaten dissidents in other parts of the world need to be anonymous. And it's like, if you think that Facebook or Twitter or whatever is going to change its global practices about anonymity or about legal but harmful or whatever, according to like the preferences of the people that are voting for Ben Houchin, basically, who like the newspapers claim to speak for, that's ludicrous. They're not going to change their product for fucking anything.
The thing is, right, like, you can sort of do this. You can do like a great firewall or whatever. You can just fucking shut the internet off if it annoys you. But it requires you to have a government that is functional. And ideally, it also requires you to have a lot of people, which, like, you know, it's 60, 70 million people versus a billion or whatever. That you know, doesn't really add up. So yeah, no, I don't think this is very enforceable. I think it is just going to amount to another little annoyance, in the same way that trying to ban pornography became an annoyance that they handed over to your internet service provider. I think this is just going to be another annoyance that they hand over to Twitter or Facebook, where they make you tick a little box that says you're not going to hurt anyone's feelings.
This is very similar to something Riley and I dug into on Bottleman, which is the slightly less bad Canadian version of this, which is Bill C-10. Where all of the sort of harmful, what they deem harmful is mainly what they call disinformatskaya.
The most confusing metro station of all.
Is that when you're allowed to say stuff, but you have to like wear blackface while you do it?
Exactly. Yes, absolutely.
What I was going to say was that, like, in both cases, in terms of like the porn ban and also like this, I think like it was very clear that MPs and lawmakers like generally, I don't know, maybe in the porn ban they genuinely thought that they could like take down pornography, but I definitely think in this instance it was less to do with like MPs actually thinking that they could actually do something meaningful to, but bearing in mind that even as we said at the beginning of the segment, there is no evidence to suggest that this was in any way like directly social media related. But even if you wanted to kind of like say in an alternative world that it was, I think that like for the majority of like MPs and lawmakers, I think they sort of accept that they can't do it. And what seems to be like the great signifier is more to do with the fact that like the state has kind of accepted that it can't really do anything, like it can't really intervene in any way. So what they've sort of done is basically kind of deflect that responsibility to technology companies, right? And they don't really have to learn how those technology companies work. They don't really know what to do. Like we saw with all the kind of like Facebook hearings that they could quite easily like get a lot of stuff over MPs' heads, or like know that the MPs won't ask them like particularly challenging questions other than how do I open a PDF and like why is my grandson not accepting my friend request on Facebook. I think like ultimately what it comes down to is that idea that like they can't do anything, and they've accepted that like not only does no one believe in the state, but the state doesn't believe in the state, right?
That's what I was gonna sort of bring out too, is that like I think you're totally right, but it's also it's more than just the state accepting that it can't do stuff. It's like a multi-decade program of the state insisting to itself that it can't do this stuff because like it doesn't comply with free market economics or whatever the fuck.
No. Well, when the state does stuff, that's socialism.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. That's right.
In this case, right, it's something that I think it's good that the state can't do it. I don't think we want the state doing it. But they've invented this problem for themselves that they are desperate to solve, but they just absolutely don't have the tools. They don't believe they have the tools, and so instead it means that all they can do is declare that they will do the impossible, at fold time and space.
Yeah, but also they are going to make it slightly harder to see what your MP's expenses are like.
Mm.
Oh yeah, they're gonna, and also in order to protect David, to protect like future victims of potential crime, they're going to everyone now in Parliament is whipping in favor of the online safety bill. This impossible, if it works, massively draconian, but also very poorly thought out piece of legislation.
Yeah, once again, the last hope of freedom of speech is crusty old white boomers in the House of Lords going, I don't know what a computer is, so I'm going to amend this, 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 and this.
Yeah,
right. But everyone's sort of now for it. Starmer has actually said, "Why?" No, he said, "Why has Boris Johnson not done this sooner and more?"
Right. Sooner and more.
Yeah. Right. Amazing. Will you commit to making this law before Christmas, Boris Johnson?
Are you guys going to be just like? Are you going to be interned in British Twitter now? Is that what's going to happen?
I think we're going to get like North Korea style intranet and the only social media will be the Matt Hancock MP app.
Fine.
Finally,
Yeah,
finally.
actually, yeah, fine.
That's where the MEK dissidents will hang out. They'll hang out on Matt Hancock MP.
It's really what we deserve. But
It's going to be Ashraf 4 online.
MEK is what we call Milton Keynes Tim Hortons.
We've been through point A, which is the fucking online harms bill. We've been through point B, which is expenses. Both of those are sort of tech related, especially A. I want to talk.
Point. The expenses
Point
thing that also encompasses. So one thing that encompasses is this. They say, well, we can't allow people to view of MPs' voting records or expenses anymore because then that might get them mad at us, and they can't ever get mad at us.
Sure,
Point C, Alice.
But point C, the one that I really want to talk about, from a senior Tory MP, a sort of a Marc Francois shaped informant, has suggested that every MP be offered the use of a firearm.
Hell yes.
Amazing. Hell yes. That's the one I'm in favor of. Fuck yeah. Can you imagine Jess Phillips trying to shoot a fucking gun? Awesome. I would sell tickets to that.
Personally, I think that they should all get guns that are like issued to them like in Battle Royale.
Oh yeah. It fits their personalities. Pretty Patel has like one of those long-barreled Lugers.
So many member of parliament related shooting incidents. It's going to be incredible.
I mean, they're going like Pretty Patel. Did they give you that SS uniform as well? Like, no, I was already wearing that.
Going to the constituency surgery, and it's like fucking the Ballad of Texas Red in there.
Yeah, they actually give David Davis gets a katana.
Yeah,
no, sorry, not David Davis. Sorry, Steve Baker. Steve Baker gets a katana.
Marc Francois is running around with a GPMG. My question is, what is Starmer issued in this?
Lid.
A single grenade. Just a single grenade.
David Davis has got the suppressed MP5 from the Wet Work mission on Call of Duty 4.
I think who do we? Grant Shapps gets maybe you could even make it themed with their like
Matt Hancock
gift,
is going to have to get a gun. We can't trust him with that.
Matt Hancock gets a water pistol.
Boris Johnson gets the handgun from David Cronenberg's Existence, but instead of being made of fish parts, it's made of like gray roast beef.
I kind of support this if we can give Jeremy Corbyn the like twin gold Berettas from Face Off.
Matt Hancock will get a gun. He'll be so fascinated by it, and he'll look directly into the barrel.
Oh no!
I think
what's all this then?
Also, people should get guns that are related to like what
Hancock.
post they have. It's like Grant Shapps should get an entirely railway-propelled piece of artillery.
Oh, he gets the Gustav gun.
Yeah, he should get that. Whoever's the commander, who's in charge of UK science, they should get the GoldenEye laser, to protect themselves.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we can't do anything else as a country anyway. So like, why not let the MPs just hunt everyone?
Liz Truss should get the Icarus space sun laser thing from Die Another Day.
I just think it's cool that fucking Rosie Duffield can be a sniper spotter team with Andy No now.
Yeah. Oh, they have to be in the ghillie suits.
That's right. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, let's. But where MPs had guns was Northern Ireland during the Troubles.
Huh.
That's where
we're bringing those back. So why not?
So you might suggest that
what we are doing. Only.
What about an island-wide Troubles? We
are applying methods of colonial violence to the metropole.
Oh shit! We keep doing that.
Yeah. Rats. Yeah, we hate when that happens. So that's basically it, right? Is this one random thing happens, and then our political machinery kicks into incredibly high gear to do the sort of, you might say, completely nonsense, unrelated, self-serving things it kind of wanted to do anyway, and operate as a single cohesive whole.
John McDonnell wearing the hitman gloves, slamming the bolt closed on an AK.
He's got the fiber wire. The British policeman who has to issue the Sinn Féin MP during the Troubles with a gun. It's like, I've already got one, thanks.
So it's of course, right? Like this is just, again, all we can do is the impossible. We can just do so long as we do things, we just have to like thrash in any given direction. and then we just have to make sure you don't stop doing stuff.
A Russian form of government. This has just reminded me that one of my friend's dads, who is extremely eccentric and possibly like actually deranged, was found to be carrying around a garroting wire. Oh my friend was like, "Why do you have that?" And he was like, "Self-defense." And he was like, "It's a weapon used in surprise attacks."
That is an assassin's weapon.
Very preemptive self-defense.
Self-defense,
you gotta be proactive.
Yeah, screw the castle doctrine. I actually live by the bush doctrine.
Or the opposite way around. I actually let myself get my ass kicked, and then as the guy's walking away, I get up really fast and...
Yeah. It's like chaos theory, you know. There's like, if RFK lives, I get mugged in like 2030. So what I'm gonna do?
So... Anyway, this is these I think the dying of this sort of the British body politic, and we are now experiencing its thrashes.
It's cool that they get guns,
it's
though. That's so fucking cool.
I mean, they're not going to, but I think it would be cool if they did, only if they got guns assigned to them according to their personalities or remits.
Yeah.
Like, I would not like them to just all be given...
Someone gets the bandage cannon.
I don't want them all... I don't want them to be all just given, like
You don't want to see Matt Hancock getting a Glock. No, it takes something out of it. He has to get a silly little, like, a 19th century revolver.
Yeah.
Matt Hancock gets the Scorpion.
Yeah.
Body of lies.
So...
he also has to wear the tracksuit.
For safety reasons. Don't ask too many questions about it.
Okay, all right. Enough British talk. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the Britishness.
Let's go to a normal country.
Yeah.
I want to introduce, I think, TF listeners to a long-standing preoccupation that we have on the Bottleman, which is all about the connections between you might say, Ukrainian ultra-nationalist groups.
One would almost classify them as ultra-nationalist fascist groups.
Indeed, certain battalions of an Azov nature.
Yes.
And the higher levels of liberal party politics. Dan, what's going on here?
Well, have you guys heard of Chrystia Freeland, our deputy prime minister, finance minister?
Yeah, the one who used to be a spy, right?
That's right.
I've seen her on Twitter and her being described as a girl boss, as a hero of the nation. So I'm very excited to find out why.
The one who used to work for CSIS, but you don't talk about that in the same way that we don't talk about how Cressida Dick used to be, deputy director of MI6.
Exactly. And if you're a liberal voter, you definitely don't question the utility or usefulness of having an intelligence-connected politician rise to the level of prime minister. You don't talk.
Wait, you're saying this woman was something of a Michael?
She's a bit of a Michael. She's a Lady Michael, you know?
Yeah, she's a bit of a Michaela.
She's Princess Michael of Kent.
Yeah. She's a Lady Michael Prime.
Yeah, that's right. So, let's talk about this.
Yeah, Freeland kind of entered Canadian politics in about 2013 and then was sort of scooped up by Trudeau's cabinet. Her political record is kind of a litany of just failure and mediocrity. Some of the failures have been pretty epic. She pushed really, really hard for Maduro, for Juan Guaido, basically.
I remember him.
Awesome.
Started up the Lima Group, which
she loves an underdog.
But I think the most interesting thing about her is that for her entire life, her life's work has been the liberation of a democratically free Ukraine that has very Galician characteristics. So we're talking about
well, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. Now, let's talk
now,
about
which Ukraine are we referring to here? Would it be the Ukraine?
It's the Ukraine that doesn't have any Russian speakers or Tartars in it. So
yeah, big Lenin statue goes down. Big statue of who's this guy? Don't worry about him.
This Ukraine might even encompass parts of surrounding countries like Poland.
Listen, we've all played Hearts of Iron and gotten a little too attached to our minor nations. It happens to the best of us.
So, Chrystia Freeland essentially is someone who, as you say, Dan, sort of rises to the top of liberal politics, and throughout her journalism career, especially the early bits of it, ends up working with, you might say, initially on behalf of some Midwestern Canadian Ukrainian community organizations, ends up working on behalf of some of those in Ukraine.
And how do these people walk at these Midwestern community organizations? Would you describe
well,
it in a
they
sort
put
of
one foot
high
up.
leg kick fashion?
Yeah, you don't want to bend the knee at all, you know.
Okay, yeah.
You can't be doing that.
Like a yoga thing.
And this was just recently, right? There were some documents that were released. So from her sort of journalism and student career in Ukraine that have suggested that she was drew the ire and respect of the KGB while she was there. Now, this has been presented in Canadian media as a kind of a sort of an encomium to
an epic girl boss
Freeland.
moment. She's so tough, even the spies respect her for non-spy related reasons.
Yeah, the KGB were doing that scene from the end of Gone in 60 Seconds where Nicolas Cage is driving away in the Shelby Mustang and he's driving too fast for the helicopter to keep up, and then Timothy Olyphant goes, "Damn, this guy can drive."
Yeah, you're kind of expected to believe reading this press that Chrystia Freeland is on like a big screen in KGB headquarters in Kiev, and a guy is just going, "Jesus Christ, is Jason Bourne?" the whole time she does anything.
Just throwing his cap on the floor, enraged. I can't stress enough how this article is not journalism.
Well, they wrote basically the same article about Gina Haspel, but when she was promoted to CIA director, about how she girl bossed it by running a black site in Thailand. So,
that's right.
Yeah.
So what this paper celebrates essentially is Chrystia Freeland doing sort of democracy advocacy, and democracy as defined by sort of NATO in Ukraine, sort of towards the end of the 1980s.
Free up some land.
Freeing up some land has actually been a real preoccupation of the Chomiak side of her family. That's her mother's maiden name being Chomiak.
I just want some room to live.
So, yeah, exactly. So
sounds like something Fed Smoker would call a Ukrainian dude.
What, Chomiak?
So no, but
get away from me, you fucking Chomiak.
We'll get to that in a moment. Where she goes to Ukraine to study Ukrainian, but doesn't really go to school, and instead is a pro-democracy advocate, right? Again, in the NED sense. And then it's sort of throughout the article, it is sort of released that, well, she sort of drew the ire of the Soviet of the KGB because she was impossible to track, and she had all these diplomatic contacts that she would give like video recording equipment and video and radar jamming equipment and computers to other civil society groups, and she was just there as a student representing her Edmonton Community Ukrainian Foundation with many intelligence contacts somehow,
including a Canadian who worked at the embassy who the KGB had codenamed Bison, who was suspected of being a spy himself, who allowed her to use the diplomatic pouch to get stuff in and out of the country.
I'd love to have access to a diplomatic pouch. I think that'd be cool. Also, Bison, cool code name. I would hope that if I was involved in some spy shit, I would get like a cool code name. You wouldn't want to be in
very big guy.
You wouldn't want to be in like the fucking Tim Hortons in Kiev, and a guy goes into his lapel. Yes, codename Dipshit is in building.
Codename Tim
Timofey Hortons.
He's ordering a maple milkshake like some kind of piece of shit.
The way that this presents her, right, is as someone who, through her own fantasticness, and don't worry about the fact that she was clearly intelligence connected. Someone who, through her own fantasticness,
if you're worried about it, don't worry about it.
Has sort of defeated Russia then and will defeat Russia now, effectively.
I am prepared to let her try.
Tough on Russia, tough on the causes of Russia.
Which is ironically Kiev, so that's going to be a problem for her.
So
there may have been another ideological motivation for a 20-year-old Chrystia Freeland to be working with, Radio Free Liberty and using the diplomatic pouch and all this. And
she loved Parliament fistfights, and she wanted to film some.
Yeah, it's not her love of freedom and democracy. It's the fact that she spent most of her adult life just steeping in the ideology of the OUN. And
what is the OUN?
Well, Riley, folks. The OUN. The OUN is a organization of Ukrainian nationalists that is extremely far right wing.
But wait, Ukrainian nationalists who are far right wing?
Yeah, I've been told that they don't exist, and that if you say they do, then you are on the payroll of Mr. Vladimir Putin.
If you say that Ukrainian nationalism exists, a Twitter account named Pokemon Trainer from Ukraine that only posts about how Ukraine doesn't have Nazis in it and also Pokemon will come and yell at you in all caps.
Yeah, these guys, the OUN, the ones who are so anti-Semitic, they managed to make Russians look sensitive and tolerant.
That's right.
In Britain, it's not Pokemon trainers, but it's like second-year university students who are like a part of a liberal club.
Oh, God.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Wearing a waistcoat to lectures.
Yeah,
Right.
actually, when I have gone on the wrong side of Ukrainian nationalists online, I would say they fall into two groups, which are guys with a lot of, shall we say, Hindu mysticist tattoos,
100%.
and who are Ukrainian, and guys who look like Jimmy Neutron, who work for a think tank in Washington D.C. called like the Ronald Reagan Institute for Regime Change, and bleat on at you about like an international rules-based order, and then when you tell them that you look like Jimmy Neutron got fired out of Chernobyl Reactor 4, they accuse you of breaching civility.
Yeah.
Interesting side note, Milo, would you believe that the guy who wrote the piece on Chrystia Freeland girl bossing the KGB, his main focus academically is whitewashing Ronald Reagan's career?
Oh, what a surprise. That's crazy.
But one of the things we're driving towards, right, is I think we're driving in sort of two directions here. Because number one, there is this...
Yeah, unlike
let's
Chrystia
say-
Freeland driving in two directions towards Stalingrad and Kursk.
There's, let's say, someone who is, at least it is reasonable to suggest that they are in some way intelligence connected, who is essentially being lined up by our sort of media and political establishment to be crowned prime minister.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? That is one thing that's happening, and it seems as though there's nothing but adulation for this fact because of our beloved intelligence services who will protect Canada from being hacked by Russia because Canada is an important country.
Yeah.
Just a group of nice Michaels.
Right? That's
The
one
good
thing.
Michaels.
No, and number two is
Canadian intelligence is like one of those London gentlemen's clubs where all the staff are called George and everyone who works there is called Michael.
and then the other thing, so we have this one thing.
Yeah, Michael
the
isn't
other thing
actually
we
a
have-
name. Michael is a code name. Michael has been played by several different actors throughout the years.
The other thing we have is other elements of Freeland's, let's say, early life and family that were are relatively under-discussed in Canadian mainstream media. So, Dan, who is Mihajlo Chomiak?
Mihajlo Chomiak is Chrystia Freeland's grandfather, someone who she has referenced as recently as like a year ago as a huge influence on her life and politics, which is true because when she was young, she and her mother moved from Red Deer to Edmonton, where Mihajlo was living, and that is when she got involved in this kind of right-wing Ukrainian diaspora movement. The reason why her grandfather had such a high placement in the community was because he used to run a Nazi newspaper in occupied Poland called Krakowski Wieści.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
And just to really make the point, right? If you are interested in drawing a distinction, which I'm not necessarily, between someone who runs a newspaper that is censored by the Nazis and someone who fully buys into their ideology, what were some of his comments upon moving into his new flat?
Oh yeah, so he sent a letter to the Reichskommissar of Krakow complaining about the Jew Dr. Finkelstein having left behind furniture in the apartment that he had been assigned.
Oh, good.
Yes. And she talks as recently as a year ago about this man
He
being...
was a big feng shui guy. He just had a Jew for descriptiveness. It wasn't pejorative in any way.
Yeah. No, so he's this guy who's Mihajlo Chomiak, the editor of this newspaper, who, let's say, we have some evidence quite enthusiastically bought into at least elements of the newspaper for whom the regime for whom he was the editor of the newspaper, is this huge influence on her life. and ends up sort of defining a lot of the Ukrainian nationalism that will end up coming through in sort of not just her anti-Soviet commitments, but also her commitments to things like the memorial to the victims of communism, for which she seems to be a big backer.
You're suggesting that she's been groomed as a kind of Galician candidate.
Basically.
Also, episode title.
Yeah.
The Galician candidate. Yeah.
I think that's it.
It is pure nationalism. And if you look at her political career, a lot of... I will say this. I'll start like this. A lot of the liberals who are defending her right now, who want to see her girl boss her way to the top, kind of ignore the fact that they'll say you can't judge Chrystia by what her grandfather did, which I would say, yeah, absolutely, that's fucking true. You can't. But what you can judge is the fact that she absorbed this frozen ideology that popped up in the chaotic world of Central Europe in 1929 and has continued on with it. So, the way she deals with Venezuela, her not just anti-communist, but anti-socialist legislation and the way she dealt with foreign policy is just completely a result of being steeped in this ideology her entire life. It's been her life's work, essentially.
I mean, we all agree that if I were, you couldn't blame me for what Hitler did, but if I were to get up and say, I really like Hitler, I hung out with him a lot when I was a kid, and I think the stuff that he said is correct.
He gave me permission to be weird.
Hang on.
He was one of the first people who really encouraged me when I was starting out in this business, He came to me and he said,
really
don't let the haters
myself.
get you down,
Helped me understand my sexuality.
Yeah, I think one of the weirdest things about this is that Freeland and the sort of people, the diaspora groups that she represents and she has grown up in, they fucking got what they wanted in 2014. Like the Maidan happened.
A Fourth Reich.
Yeah, exactly. They got what they wanted, and it's not as exciting as they thought it would. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Two Galicias.
Yeah, it's as you say, it's not. They get what they wanted, which is a revived Ukrainian nationalist movement that sort of that aims at the restoration.
You get to do funny salutes and say Slava Ukraina all the time, which is a totally great thing to be doing and very normal. That's all. They were really in it for, that and the genocide, which
Well, they get to there is this renewed ambition of carving out a greater Galicia, but there is also this idea that it helps with sort of the goals of perpetual constant imperial war in the West as well, because what happens, right, is Freeland and her family, sort of the Chomiaks move to Alberta, where there's these big Ukrainian communities. If you want to know a lot more about the history of these different waves of immigration politically, check out the blog.
Alberta's the only province with no rats, but a lot of rat lines.
where there's this nationalist diaspora ends up, right? And then you can begin to, if you sort of look at it in this context, you can begin to see sort of the girl bossing it in late 80s Ukraine, totally not a spy. You can see a lot of the you can see a lot of the sort of her stance on say Guaido, for example. You can see a lot of the fact that the first thing she did when she was finance minister was meet with the Canadian Federation of Small Businesses, what is essentially a Canadian union busting organization.
She met with Brent Butt to talk about corner gas.
Another thing you got to remember is, in between the late 80s and then her political career here, she was desk chief for a couple of publications in Moscow, international publications. So she was on the front line for the melting down of the Soviet Union and learned absolutely nothing from those neoliberal policies. So that alone, for me, that alone is enough to disqualify, to terrify me with the prospect of her becoming prime minister.
Oh, of course.
Well, everything's fine in Russia, as far as I'm aware.
But also, right, not only did she sort of view, again, if you want to look at her family, what did her father do as soon as the Ukrainian SSR no longer existed?
Oh, SSR. Okay.
Oh, beat the heat.
So this is the other thing that no one ever talks about. So that you'll notice in the article about her girl bossing the KGB into submission that the tone at the end is basically like, she stood up to the Soviet Russians, she stood up to the Putinite Russians, and she'll continue to stand up. But the reason that modern Russia as a state sort of is not happy with Freeland isn't just because of her activities during the Soviet Union. It's because immediately after the fall of the Soviet Union, her mother goes to Ukraine and gets to work rewriting the Ukrainian constitution, specifically the section on the protocols by which new laws will be adopted, with a focus on private ownership. And then about a year later, her uncle, Bogdan, arrives on behalf of a USAID cutout, basically helping, quote unquote, helping people privatize formerly like collective agricultural land. So like Riley, I believe you called it a re-kulakization.
Cool.
So this family's it's a generational project, right? The Chomiak Freelands are well known to the Russian state.
It's a family business, much like corn or gas.
So, and I think what this all sort of means politically for Canada is, we have a political and media class that is just almost defensively uninterested in asking any of these questions about this politician that makes them feel good about themselves because she's sort of epic in West Wing.
Yeah. Well, also it goes back, I think, to what we were kind of alluding to earlier, which is that like all of these like fucking idiots like to pretend that, that the West is like, defending the freedom of the Ukrainian people, when like it's like a bunch of people in fucking like Langley or wherever else don't give a flying fuck about Ukraine. Okay?
100%.
No one gives a fuck about Ukraine. Ukrainians barely give a fuck about Ukraine, right? Like it is purely a cudgel with which to potentially start some sort of fucking saber-rattling thing with Russia. There's absolutely zero interest in what. Otherwise, like I think even the West might take a bit of a view on the Azov battalion if they weren't so politically useful. Like, I think even a lot of Western liberals might have a closer look at some of those tattoos if they weren't so invested in having a go at Putin.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They wouldn't be the West if they weren't invested in having a go at someone for whom a fascist organization was useful.
Yeah,
that's one of the things that makes the West is Operation Gladio and the rat lines.
And part of the utility of this like Freeland mania is to, I think, in the liberal.
I've got the Freeland fever.
I got this Freeland fever.
I can't stop this Freeland. Yeah.
I think part of the idea behind this is, and it's a terrible one, and it will fail, but is to relitigate 2016. To basically run Hillary 2.0 Canadian-Ukrainian version and have a go at Putin that way, Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Great.
Yeah. We're going to make a pantsuit woman the president of Ukraine.
Yeah, that's what we're going to have.
And she's going to be wearing an armband on that pantsuit.
Fine.
Did you guys know that there are two women's clothing stores in Pristina in Kosovo, both called Hillary 1 and Hillary 2, and they only sell pantsuits.
Nice.
Yeah, and we need to expand those into the Donbass. Eastern Ukraine needs Hillary 1. It didn't get Hillary 1, but maybe Canada will give them Hillary 2.
And there's two brothels in Pristina, which are called Bill 1 and Bill 2.
That's right.
All right, I noticed we're going a little bit long, so I just want to say, Dan, thank you so much for coming on another podcast with me.
Thanks for having me on. It was nice to see all you, and nice to hear about Britain. Every time I hear about Britain, I'm like, it's getting better all the time over there,
What if Christian Freeland had a Sturmgewehr?
Yeah, what if that? Yeah, well, yeah. What gun does Christian Freeland get?
She gets
STG-44.
She gets the V2 rocket.
Yeah. That's right. No, she just gets the paperclip. The humble
paperclip. Yeah. It would be a shame if someone were to start some kind of operation with this paperclip.
All right. Don't forget we have a Patreon, $5 a month, second episode every week. You know the drill.
You can subscribe to the Patreon, where the Dan Boeckner on the Trashfuture podcast, live from the Ukraine.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah,
some kind of Dracula definite article guy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I want to suck the blood.
I want to suck the blood.
Anyway,
the blood of you.
all that being said, we will see you later, everybody. Bye.
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 Bye.